Welcome back folks, my name's Shane. This is just a quick video to talk a little bit more about the LUMIX S9 and what I've worked out about it after my trip to Osaka, which was awesome. So I put this camera through its paces in the field, shooting my review video, doing all the test samples and all that kind of stuff. And there was something that everybody missed, and I'm here to talk about what that is right now. So if you're familiar with the Panasonic LUMIX S5II and X, they're both awesome cameras. My favorite full frame camera of all. I have a Sony over here as well. Big fan of how that camera looks and operates as well, but there's no limitations to this camera when it comes to autofocus performance. So you can shoot face detection autofocus at 1080p at 24, 25 and 30 frames per second, but when you go over to 1080p at 50 or 60 frames, it defaults back to contrast DFD. Now, believe it or not, I'm actually shooting this video on the S9 at 1080p at 50 frames per second. And you can see from the LED lights behind me that there's no contrast DFD. It's latching onto me nice and quickly. I can hold this up in front of my face and it's going to transition nice and smoothly. And then it's going to find my face again. This is using human tracking. So the autofocus performance on the LUMIX S9 is actually currently better than that of the S5II and X. The S5II and X has an S&Q mode on it. And one of the biggest problems a lot of people have with this mode is, unlike the regular recording, frame rate modes in the menu, which gives us full phase hybrid autofocus, if you switch over to S&Q, you're back to contrast DFD. And now the S9 will allow us to record up to 1080p at 100 frames per second with phase detection autofocus. I found this by accident just doing some product B-roll here in the studio, and it pulled focus time and time again, and it looked beautiful. It looked every bit as good as my Sony FX3, which is how I usually use that camera. The focus pulls are fantastic. You just tap on the screen and it does a really great job. The LUMIX S9 also does a great job, which makes it a really great B cam. Now I tested this at 120 frames per second in HD and you're back to contrast DFD. So even if you're in North America and you want to use the S&Q mode, set it to 1080p at 100 and you're going to get much slower footage without any compromise on image quality over, say, shooting at 50 or 60 frames per second. I think it looks really good. Being that the S9 is as small and as light as it is, it's been my main B-roll camera here in the studio recently, and it's performed beautifully. And knowing now that we get reliable autofocus puts it in a whole other league, especially if you're a gimbal operator. While you kind of don't even need a gimbal anymore with the new E-stabilization, if you choose to shoot with one for artistic creativity reasons, then you're going to get better performance out of the S9 currently than the S5IIX and S5II. Again, I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but what I have got my fingers crossed for is that we see the same autofocus performance come to the S5II and X, because if the S9 is capable of this with the same sensor and more recording restrictions, then I'm hoping we see some upgrades to the S5II. And this works beautifully. You're looking at 1080p at 50 frames per second right now, and it works a treat. If I pop out a frame, you're not going to see the LED lights do anything they shouldn't be doing. It latches on nice and fast, all that kind of stuff. So face detection autofocus, pretty cool. This is how it should be anyway. But anyway, thanks for watching.